Hello, Robert. Very nice to see
Hi,
you this
Kathy.
morning. I
Thank you.
just
And you?
wanted to have a quick chat with you about the house. You commissioned me
Excellent.
with your wife. It is now about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, possibly.
Yes.
You, by profession, are a chartered financial planner, and your wife is a lawyer. And
Yes.
the house is nested in St. John's Wood in North London. And I just wanted to have a chat about 5 years on in the project and how the process
Mm.
was. Have you ever worked before with architects?
Yes. About 20 years ago, I bought a very large flat in the city near the Tower of London, which had been very badly um, renovated by a property developer. And I brought an architect in to remodel it.
When you came about to formulate your brief to the architects, what were you thinking? What did you want them to achieve?
In that original project 20 years ago,
No,
or on the
with
project
your
now?
current project, with your current
Oh
house.
yes. So, well, as you'll remember, our property is very interesting, very distinctive Victorian property, made of three very small Victorian buildings knocked into one, and in a very difficult site, completely surrounded by other buildings, with very limited access and very limited light, because other buildings were cutting out the light in all sorts of directions. So while it was charming, it was also dark and pokey, and it had small inconvenient rooms. It had no flow to it. It had strange little steps up, steps down, different levels. It was, if you like, it was a little old lady's cottage, and not
Yeah.
there was no light, there was no feeling of space. There was no feeling of one family together under one roof. It was different levels, different entrances, different people in different rooms, not able to hear each other or see each other. So we wanted to completely remodel it. We wanted it to be open plan. We wanted it to be flowing. We wanted it to have light and a feeling of space and high ceilings. And that essentially was the brief. I think what my wife said to you is, bring in light and make it feel bigger. And that in one sentence was your brief.
Correct. When we first met, what stood out from our conversations that you decided that I will be the one?
Well, of course, the first thing was that you came with a very strong recommendation from another architect who we knew and respected. I think it was in contrast to the architects that had been on the project before. Your first point, your lead in, if you like, was, okay, what are you wanting to achieve? Not, well, this is what we think should be done. So you formulated your ideas by in response to our ideas. The other thing, and I've said this to you before, which we thought was absolutely wonderful, was that our daughters, who were then, I think, 12 and 14, something like that. You said, right, now I need to talk to the girls. And we said, why? And you said, they're stakeholders in this as well. They're going to live in the house. I want to know what they think. I want to know what they want. And that wasn't just lip service. You actually then engaged with them on the online, and you exchanged emails, and they sent you pictures of things they liked and ideas they had and so on. And I think that the nicest and most unusual thing was the way that you engaged the next generation in the project as well.
I do distinctly remember the girls, we had a wonderful exchange with them, and they were extremely excited about the design and colors and shapes and lights. It was wonderful.
Yes.
Do you feel I have fulfilled the brief now that you live in the house 2 years on?
We had to move out for the project. We moved out in October 2008, and we moved back in exactly 2 years ago. As I say, a small, pokey, damp Victorian cottage and we came back to a white, light, spacious, modern house, all on one level, apart from the girls' bedrooms, all flowing, all completely transformed, but with enough of the period features left so that we hadn't just wiped out everything that was interesting about the old building. So that was a nice combination. You respected the bones of the building that was there. You respected the distinctive period features, but at the same time, you gave us a white, light, modern house, and we're absolutely delighted with it.
You spent COVID and lockdowns there in the house. How was it?
Well, as my wife always says, we could not have spent lockdown in this house the way it was before you did your work, or see each other. It would not have worked. It would not have worked. And as it was, I mean, obviously lockdown is difficult, but because of the work you've done and the house that you delivered for us, it worked fine.
As part of the lessons learned, what would you recommend to clients like yourself standing ahead of the project?
At the start of a project?
Yes.
Well, I think that one perhaps us the option of 3D modeling, and we said no to that, and because we felt that we were good at visualizing things, and we didn't need a 3D model. But in retrospect, I think we would have understood the project as it was going on better if we'd had a 3D model, because as you'll remember, there was a lot of structural work, a great deal of steel went in, walls were taken down. And I think if we'd had a 3D model, we would have understood what was happening as we went along. But, on the other hand, we were excited and surprised every time we came on site. So maybe not having a 3D model and not always understanding what was about to happen was a good thing. I'm not sure.
So was the communication between ourselves, was the communication what helped you through the project, through the process, to understand where we were, what needs to happen as a next step?
We're saying you're very good at is going from the general to the specific. So you had the overall plans, you had the visualizations and so on, which let us understand the project and let us understand what was going to happen. But then you produced extremely detailed drawings for individual features, lighting plans, plumbing plans, the way you had very specific drawings and plans and ideas for very detailed things, but they were all in the service of the overall vision. And I think that's very important. The detail is very good, and some of your individual design solutions were quite brilliant, but they always served the overall picture. They weren't simple architectural flourishes for the sake of them. They were all there to serve the overall vision.
What do you think COVID has done to the design of the house? If you were to embark on the process again, knowing what you know now with COVID and lockdown behind us, what do you think? How do you think the house has changed? Not your house necessarily, but broadly speaking, any house.
I think for us, we would soundproof the teenagers' rooms more if we'd known that we were all going to be living under the same roof 24 hours a day for a year. But I think it's an interesting one. Whether it'll ever happen again, of course, we don't know. But I suppose if we'd been future-proofing for a pandemic we didn't know was going to happen, we would probably have tried to give the teenagers a bit more space. I'm not quite sure how we would have done that, perhaps building up a little. On the other hand, they each have their own ensuite shower room, which is very good, and that's probably prevented open warfare breaking out. But for example, we could have given them ceiling height given that they had to study in their rooms and socialize in their rooms and so on. That would have been helpful. But I don't think we'd have changed anything else.
From your exchange with your colleagues, friends, what is their findings about the house?
Well, it very much depends on it. that very much depends on people and where they've got to in life. For people my age who have, either their children have left home or they're at secondary school or they don't have children, it's been absolutely fine. In fact, it's been rather nice to be at home, not to have to commute, working from home. Everybody's been very pleasantly surprised at how easy it is to do business on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever it may be. For my younger colleagues and the younger people I know, it's been very, very difficult because working from home, if you're sharing a small flat without outside space in a not particularly nice part of town with 3 other people that you don't really know, being stuck in the working and living in the same place for a year has been really, really difficult. So I think it very much depends on where you are in your career, where you are in your life, have access to outside space. Do you have enough room to swing a cat in? It really depends on the answers to those questions.
Now that we started coming out and going out more, what is your experience of London? How London has changed?
It's interesting. I mean, I work in Mayfair, and certainly it's much emptier than it was. The bars and the cafes and the restaurants and the shops are all much more empty than they were. It's almost like a ghost town at times. But I think you can see the life slowly coming back. I think the difference is that this area, St John's Wood, is now very lively. People are delighted to be back. The shops are open, new businesses are opening, and it has a very good feel. The centre of London, the West End, and I believe the city is the same, is still much quieter than it was. People are not going to the office 5 days a week anymore. But we'll have to see whether in the autumn, if restrictions are lifted, whether people do go back to the office 5 days a week. But personally, I don't think they will. I just don't think it's necessary. I don't think people will want to commute anymore. And they will say, well, I'm going to go into the office 3 days a week, or I'm going to go to my workplace 3 days a week, but no longer 5. And that will have a long-term economic impact, and it will have an impact on our cityscape, on our streetscape, and so on and so forth, I think.
It does. Finally, I wanted to ask you, since we spent so much time last year at home, what books were you reading, if you can share something with us?
Yes, 3 books that recently that I've enjoyed. I read, I'm still reading The Mirror and the Light, the 3rd volume of Hilary Mantel's trilogy about Thomas Cromwell and Henry VIII. Very, very fine book. I loved the first 2. I love this. I'm enjoying that. The other 2 things that I've been reading and in an attempt to understand what went wrong in American politics in the last few years, I've read the first volume of Obama's presidential autobiography and very moved and impressed by that. But I've also gone back in time and I'm reading a book called Master of the Senate, which is the 3rd volume of a massive biography of Lyndon B. Johnson.
Very interesting.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
What song is on your playlist when you read or when you work?
There's one song that has really been the thing I listen to most for the last 44 years, I think, since it came out, which is a song by a New York band called Television, a song called Marquee Moon. And if you don't know it, as soon as we're finished, you should go to Spotify and have a listen.
I will.
It's quite extraordinary.
I can't thank you enough. Thank you for spending time this morning. I really, really appreciate it. And say hi to your lovely ladies at home.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for everything you've done on this project. It's been an enormous success. With just a few things, as you know, to finish off, but we're very, very happy with it. And certainly we hope that we'll have an opportunity to do another project with you again in the future.
I certainly hope so. I look forward to it. Thank you.